I'm now very happy to introduce you to Patty Silverstein. Well-versed on the local economy, Patty is consulting chief economist for the Metro Denver Economic Development Corporation, author of the Chamber's monthly Economic and Indicators Report, and if you don't get that, you should get it. I get it every month, and it's just a really cool program, and we look at our business planning in great part based upon the data that we get from Patty. She's also president of Development Research Partners, a real estate analysis and economic development research company. We're also honored that she has become a staple of Vectra's annual economic event. Please help me welcome Patty.
Good morning. Did everybody have a good year last year? Are you looking forward to an even better year this year? Really? Nobody is? Come on. Okay, I'll tell you what kind of a good year you'll be looking forward to. How about that? So Elizabeth has already kicked this off talking about all of our changing faces. So this is my favorite chart that her entity does because, and I stole it from them, admittedly. But this shows now, we're going to zoom into what's going on within the Metro Denver area. And by Metro Denver, I'm talking about Douglas County on the south, all the way up into Boulder and Adams counties on the north. So this now takes a look at our population in the Metro Denver region by these various age groups or by these various generational groups. And so again, you can see, what this looks at 2015. Notice that Metro Denver has a younger population than the state as a whole. So actually, millennials became the largest generational group here in the Metro Denver region before they did at the whole state level. So we've had a few years of already dealing with millennials being kind of the largest group here. They're shown in the red. And I want you to focus on the group that is in between the black bars. That's our potential labor force. So a lot of the millennials still very young, still in school, wrapping up their education, but we also see the baby boomers now starting to move out of retirement. Notice that blue group is called I have it labeled just the next generation. They don't have a name yet. The Pew Research Center is the one that usually comes up with all the fancy names for the generational groups, and our next generation doesn't have a name yet. Some people are calling them Gen Z. I've heard them called Gen We, like the gamers. I love that one. I think that's great. So we'll see whether that sticks or exactly where we end up. So this is current. Fast forward now to 10 years from now. And you'll see that the millennials are very solidly now the bulk of our labor force. The boomers have been moving out of the labor force. There are all those purple bars. We're all now enjoying traveling and restaurants and kind of everything that Elizabeth mentioned there. So in 10 short years, we do go through this whole major demographic shift. So what does this mean then for our workers here? Or our companies here? So just kind of a few kind of fun facts or fun tidbits about these whole changing demographic groups here. So first of all, our millennials are on track to be the most educated generation in our history. Now, as business owners, we know we want those best, those brightest. So the good news is that you're going to have this group of very highly educated to attract then to your companies. But notice also we're having this increase in contingent employment. This is temporary workers, freelancers, consultants. What we're seeing out there is this whole transition on both sides, both the boomers as well as the millennials, of looking for flexibility in their work schedules, of being able to work on the projects that they want to, of finding meaningful type of work. So kind of this whole temporary type of attitude as well. Notice also the increase in telecommuting. They want the flexibility to be able to work at home sometimes or to be able to work in different locations, that type of thing. And very interested in entrepreneurship. So for companies now, as we're looking forward, in the Metro Denver region, we're expected to average an unemployment rate of 4% in 2015. 4%. Now, if you think back to your days in Econ 101, because I'm sure all of you took that class, you will find that that natural rate of unemployment, there's still a lot of debate about what that is, but it's 4.5%, 5%. So we're going to be operating in an economy then where it's going to be a very tight labor market. So it's really going to behoove our companies, excuse me, to think about how do I get these workers? How do I keep these workers? How do I retain these workers? Because it's going to be a very competitive environment out there. So we're continuing to grow. We're continuing to expand. Our employment has been growing at about a 3.2% rate in Metro Denver in 2014. And it will expand by about 3% in 2015. So what this means is that we're adding roughly 45,000 workers in last year and this year. So a nice surge in employment here. As we take a look, though, those numbers that we look at in terms, when we talk about employment growth rates, remember, they don't include a huge component of our economy, which is our sole proprietors. Those numbers, those employment growth numbers, don't generally include those folks. And this is a really important part of our economy. And remember, too, that we have a lot of interest. These millennials that are moving here in droves are very interested in entrepreneurship. Colorado ranks as the ranks number 4 when it comes to concentration of these sole proprietors. We look at the first state, or the number 1 state in terms of that whole concentration of proprietors as being, yes, Kelly Bruff's home state, Montana. And when we think about this again, when we take a look at all across the country, and why do these proprietors move? Why do these entrepreneurs go to these areas? Again, I think it becomes very important to be taking a look at the quality of life. These are independent thinkers. They are moving according to where they see opportunities. And so maintaining the quality of life and the advantages here in Colorado helps us to attract and retain all of these really best and brightest when it comes to the entrepreneurial area. So we're growing, going to be adding about 45,000 jobs. What industries are we expecting to see some of this growth in? So as our economic development strategy, the Metro Denver Economic Development Corp focuses on 8 key industry clusters. These are the key industries that as these industries start to expand, it lifts the entire economy. As we start to see expansion in these industries, we start to see expansion in construction activity and retail activity and all of those various industries. These are our primary employers. And one of the fun ways to take a look at this is through our bubble chart. So on this bubble chart, we are taking a look at all of our clusters and our subclusters denoted by the same color of the bubble there. Along the bottom graph, or the bottom axis, then, we're looking at the growth rate. So notice that our fastest growing industry in 2014, of our fastest growing industry clusters, was energy. And by that, I'm taking a look at both clean tech, that renewable energy side, as well as the fossil fuel side, all the oil and gas. So remember, most of the data that we've been taking a look at for Metro Denver is a 7-county. When we take a look at our industry clusters, we're actually looking at 9-county. So we're pulling in Weld and Larimer County into this whole discussion as well, hence the very fast growth in the oil and gas that we have seen. Now, little concern as we move forward into 2015 of what does this mean that our gasoline prices are declining like this? So even as we do our happy dances as we fill up our gas tanks, because we all do these days, right? We're still a little concerned that there are areas of the country where these falling prices are not necessarily a benefit. In those areas of the country where they're not necessarily as much of a benefit can be right here in Colorado or in any of those major oil-producing states. So we're looking at that as kind of slowing our growth a little bit, but certainly not putting a halt to our growth by any stretch of the imagination here in the Metro Denver region. So nonetheless, you could still do your happy dance when you fill up your gas tank, but do recognize that it does mean that our job growth will not be as rapid in 2015 as it would be if we continue to see the expansion in drilling activity and that type of thing. I should mention, too, that as far as those industry cluster reports, they were just released. All of the 2014 reports were just released last week. You can get all that 10, 20-page information on each of our industry clusters for free at metrodenver.org. So I encourage you that if you're really focused on any of those industries, learn about the trends, learn about what is going on within those various industry groups. Because I could talk for hours about that, but we have lots of other things to cover. So I want to move on forward. And now I want to talk about commercial real estate, because as we see this whole expansion then in employment, we're starting to see more of our commercial real estate space being occupied. So all throughout 2014, we saw vacancy rates going down. We saw lease rates going up. In fact, we are now at historic lows when it comes to our industrial market. Why do we have such a low vacancy rate on industrial? Everybody's thinking, I know you're thinking it's the grow operations, But we're actually seeing a resurgence in industrial all across the country, and it's not just the grow operations here. We have an expansion in manufacturing. In the Metro Denver region, this is so exciting. So our manufacturers are taking up more of that space. We're also seeing more of the warehouse and distribution space being taken up as companies are trying to get their little Amazon drones to deliver things. So certainly what we see with the expansion of some of the grow operations is making it more challenging for some of the companies, but that's not the only reason that industrial has indeed been expanding. So when we take a look then, because of these very low vacancy rates, we're seeing new construction all around. And some of this new construction then at very high levels on the industrial market and speculative industrial buildings. Oh my golly, did you think we would see the day on that once again? And so certainly lots of industrial construction underway, lots of office space underway, a lot of that office space being kind of centered right here in the downtown Denver region. On the retail side, not as much development. In fact, that's really more where we're seeing redevelopment type of activities. And another big influence from the construction side is infrastructure. So soon, we are going to be able to take fast tracks all around the Metro Denver area. How cool is that? And so we had, the West Line that came online last year, and now we have the Gold, the I-225, the East Line, the US 36, Best Rapid Transit Corridor, all coming on board by 2016, North Metro by 2018. We're building out this whole system. We're doing all of this expansion out at DIA. So mobility throughout the Metro Denver region so greatly enhanced and definitely changing our development patterns. The big question that remains out there, what in the world are we going to do with I-70? How can we get people from Denver International Airport up to the Vail area in an easy, efficient manner where you don't have to spend hours and hours upon the road? And I think that really is one of the greatest challenges then that we as a community are facing right now. So let's focus on all these changing demographics too as far as how they influence where we are living. So with millennials on target to be the most educated generation in history, student loan debt is definitely accumulating here. So their credit score is a little bit lower and all too, and so they're a little bit challenged when it comes to purchasing some new homes. So the millennials have actually been living in our basements yet, right? So in 2012, 36% of our millennials were still living in their parents' home. Now, some of the millennials at this point, they were young. They were supposed to be there living in our homes. But of those that really should be out moving out on their own, we're seeing definitely a delay in that type of patterns. Now, we're also seeing that the younger buyers, when they move into the market, are actually buying a lot of the older homes. So case in point, my backyard neighbors have this, my neighborhood is 30, 40 years old there. Young couple went in, bought this house, just really scraped the entire insides of this. They redid everything. And I'm like, wow, how did you guys learn how to do this? And evidently, you can learn how to do anything by watching YouTube. So they are figuring out how to redecorate, redesign, reuse, repurpose by all of in their purchasing patterns and in their housing patterns there. So with all of that, then we're seeing some consistent sales patterns, I would say. I mean, we're seeing that our home sales activity is really at about our historic norms given the size of our marketplace. So just a 0.1 increase that we had in 2014, half a percentage point increase in 2015. Again, a good, reasonable level of activity given the size of our market. But our market, I would suggest, is also pretty constrained by the fact that even if you want to buy a home, it is hard to find those homes. So throughout this entire metropolitan region, 3 million people strong here, we had 4,300 homes on the market in December. That's it, 4,300 homes. This is down by 45% from just a year ago. So definitely a very challenging market out there. And that is then leading to these very high home prices. So when we take a look at median home prices, notice first of all that in the Denver metro region, we surpassed $300,000 in terms of our median home price for the first time in 2014. And indeed, we expect that we're going to be knocking up to about $325,000 for our median home price in 2015. Notice also that gap between Metro Denver and the US is getting wider. So again, we are perceived as a very expensive housing market. That's a challenge from the economic development side when these companies are looking to grow and expand. Can their employees afford to live here? I would also add that, so this looks at the Denver MSA. If I were to put Boulder on the graph here too, the Boulder median home price up to $436,000. Ouch. So because of that, we're seeing a lot of interest in apartments. So if I can't afford to buy a home, I'm going to instead just rent the space there. And so certainly our apartment vacancy rate has been staying very low, but that apartment lease rate has also been increasing now, up to $1,169 in the fourth quarter of 2014. That was our average lease rate, up 12% over the year. So many of these folks too are looking at this saying, can I just kind of throw all that money out the window in terms of rent, or should I put it into an ownership position? And it's a tough balancing act right now. So one of the things that what we're seeing now in the market and responding to these very low vacancy rates, high sales activity, is a lot of new residential construction. Yay! Remember a few years ago when I stood up here, Bruce, and it was like I was apologizing because there was nothing going on in terms of new activity there for folks that are in the development markets. But now we're definitely seeing expansion. Notice that most of the half of the construction, I should say, is multifamily. That means we're looking at higher density opportunities here. And it's because of, again, at the different age groups. We have the millennials that are interested in higher density. We have the boomers that are interested in higher density because they want lower maintenance types of opportunities. So we're at 50% now of development. Our historic norm is 25%. And some people have expressed some concern of, are we overbuilding? But remember, we have fast tracks coming. We have this new opportunity for transit-oriented development and new density that we did not have in prior years. So this has really been a great response to the market and providing some opportunities then for our folks to live and work here in the Metro Denver region. So with that, thank you so much. Have a fabulous 2015. We'll see you again soon, I hope.